Welcome to the Jedburgh podcast. I'm the creator and host, Fran Racioppi. Each episode, I speak with transformative leaders, visionaries, drivers of change, and those dedicated to winning no matter the challenge. The Jedburgh podcast is founded in the lineage of the special operations Jedburgh teams of the past and is produced in partnership with Talent War Group, a management consulting and executive search firm focused on helping you optimize the people side of your business. We're sponsored by Jersey Mike Subs. Together, we share the mission of giving, making a difference in someone's life. Visit the Jedburgh Podcast, Talent War Group, and Jersey Mike Subs on the web and on all social media. A percentage of all proceeds is dedicated to the Green Beret Foundation, supporting America's Special Forces and their families.
I try to mix it up and show people the different options you have when you're cooking at home. If you want to spend 3 hours cooking at home on a Sunday, I have a recipe for that.
Yeah.
And if you want to spend 45,
I'm going to do it.
Yeah. And if you want to spend 30 or 45 minutes to get dinner on the table, I have a recipe for that too. It doesn't change the quality of the food. It doesn't change the quality of the dish, but I want to teach you through this book technique. And really what I want to teach people is confidence. Genuinely want people to use this book. I want to see it dirty. I want to see the pages ripped open.
Do you ever consider how much of your time you spend in your kitchen? It's the epicenter of our homes, the place we eat, where we talk, where we congregate when people come over. It doesn't matter how big or how small your kitchen is. It's going to be the place that always has room for one more person. But do you cook in your kitchen? Do you cook at home? What do you cook? How do you cook? Why do you cook at home? These are the questions Chef Gavin Kaysen gets asked, and the questions he asks himself. Chef Kaysen is the recipient of 2 James Beard Awards. He was named the Rising Star Chef of the Year in 2008 and Best Chef in the Midwest in 2018. He's the executive culinary producer for the reboot of Iron Chef on Netflix and the owner of Spoon and Stable Demi, 2 award-winning restaurants in Minneapolis, one of which I visited. He also owns Bellecour Bakery, Mara, and Soca Cafe. For this episode, I headed to Columbus Square to sit down with Chef in one of the most iconic and delicious restaurants in New York City, Boulud Sud, owned and operated by legendary Chef Daniel Boulud. Chef Kaysen and I answered these questions about cooking at home as we covered his new book, At Home. Chef talks about creating majestic moments in hospitality and in business. He explains why we need recipes that are simple yet authentic, why it's important not to talk down to home chefs, and what essentials anyone looking to make an impact on their daily meals or holiday feasts needs in the pantry. Pick up a copy of At Home and learn more about Chef Kaysen at gavinkaysen.com and on social media at Gavin Kaysen. Take a listen to my conversation with Chef Kaysen on your favorite podcast platform. Watch the full video version of our discussion on YouTube. Subscribe to us and follow at Jedburgh Podcast on all social media. And check out our website, jedburghpodcast.com. Special thanks to Chef Daniel Boulud and the entire Boulud Sud staff for hosting Chef Kaysen and our Jedburgh team. I'd be remiss if I hadn't tried some recipes before I met with Chef Kaysen, so don't forget to check out our socials to see my renditions of some of At Home's most popular recipes. Chef Kaysen, welcome to the Jedburgh Podcast.
Thank you. Happy to be here.
And welcome to New York City.
Right? Good to be here too.
We stalked you when we were in Minneapolis.
Yeah, I love it.
So Jenny, our production coordinator, she was going through popular places in Minneapolis when we were there and came across the restaurants.
Yeah.
Demi and Spoon and Stable.
Yeah.
And she was like, we need to talk to Chef Kaysen.
Yeah.
And I said, yes, let's do it. And so we hit you up on Instagram.
Yeah.
And I sincerely appreciate you responding to us and setting this up.
Yeah, it's so funny, right, that the way Instagram works now via communication, because it's like you can't respond to everything, right? But sometimes you're like, oh, this could be cool. Let's check it out. See what happens.
Well, we're here, and I have to give a special shout out to Chef Daniel Boulud for hosting us at Boulud Sud here on 64th and Broadway. I mean, absolutely incredible space.
Is this your first time here?
This is my first time
Cool.
here. And I've lived in the city for years.
Yeah. So this was a bank. This was originally a bank. This
was
space.
It really?
Yeah.
Well, that's why downstairs there's all the different
exactly.
rooms.
Yeah. So he opened up Bar Boulud first. So when I started to work for him in 2008, he was opening up Bar Boulud. And then he opened up Boulud Sud and then Epicerie Boulud. So it's called 64th and Broadway. We call it 64th and Boulud because it's like it's all his restaurants. But so I helped sort of see this restaurant come to life when it was opening.
Well, it's a great place, and you have a big day. You were on the Today Show,
yeah,
and so I'm honored because you came to here to meet with me after the Today Show.
That's
so
right.
that was huge, and we were in the car driving down here, and we pulled it up on YouTube TV so we could try.
Oh,
to
cool!
watch
Right on.
it. So don't tell the cops. And you have a big night,
yeah.
And so you have an event here tonight. You're going to get in a prep after this and get going, but you've been the recipient of 2 James Beard Awards, Rising Star Chef of the Year in 2008, Best Chef of the Midwest in 2018, Executive Culinary Producer for the reboot of Iron Chef on Netflix, owner of Spoon and Stable and Demi, both 2 award-winning restaurants in Minneapolis. We went to Spoon and Stable, by the way,
Thank you.
when we were there. Also own Bellecour Bakery, Mara, and Soca Cafe. Your catering company fuels the Minnesota Timberwolves and the Minnesota Wild. You serve on the board of several nonprofits. You're active in the Independent Restaurant Coalition, and you're dedicating a lot of time to the development of the next generation of culinary experts. And you're the author of At Home.
Yeah.
And I sincerely appreciate you sending me an advance copy of it, because we haven't released them yet. Yeah. But I've spent the last couple of nights cooking out of your book.
Cool. Awesome.
So the first night we made the cavatelli.
Yes.
My mom came down from Rhode Island, helped out with that. And last night we did breakfast for dinner, and we have the French toast.
Amazing.
Absolutely phenomenal.
Amazing.
It didn't look quite like it does when you make it, but it was much better than our normal.
Yeah, it's funny too. And that cavatelli is a great recipe, because people always make it and they feel like, is it the right way? Is it the wrong way? And the next thing you know, you have freshly made pasta.
Yeah,
it just kind of comes together.
It was absolutely amazing. But you wrote the book At Home, and I kind of want to start there, because you posed these 4 questions, and you said that your guests ask you often a number of these questions, starting with, do you cook at home? And then that takes you to this journey of, what do you cook at home? And how do you cook at home? And then, why do you cook at home? So what I thought we'd do in this conversation is, we would actually talk about each one of these questions, tell your journey through the lens of this path that following these questions in the book takes you. First one, do you cook at home?
Yeah.
So, simple question, but I think a complex answer. Obviously, it's yes. But you said, quote, cooking provides the same immersive flow state that others find on a hike, at the gym, or inside a good book. Ever since I was a little kid, cooking has been my way to escape reality. What is it about cooking that drew you in, and why does it escape reality?
Yeah, it's interesting. So when I was 7 years old, I was baking Christmas cookies with my grandmother, Dorothy, who I'm sure we'll talk about. And at that time, you know, my cousins, my brother, my neighbors, friends, they're all outside playing football in the snow. And we get done baking the cookies, and we tell them the cookies are ready, and I see them all come from outside in. And it was a really pivotal moment in my life, because I realized 7 ingredients is what brought everybody together at a table. And so it was a light bulb for me that just kind of went off. And then I sort of realized I had so much fun doing it. I remember then I was probably 10 years old, or 12 years old, actually. And I was at a cabin, and my uncle said to me, tomorrow we're going to make freshly made pancakes. I couldn't sleep that night because I was so excited to make pancakes the next morning. Like, what 12-year-old?
It doesn't matter how old you are.
Cares that you want to make pancakes. You know, it's like, it's so weird. But it was always my way of just finding peace. And even to this day, I mean, I'm 43 years old. If I go on vacation with my family, I have to be in a hotel or a rental Airbnb or something that provides me a kitchen. Because if it's a 2-week vacation or a week vacation, by day 3, I need to be in the kitchen cooking.
You brought up your grandmother, Dorothy, as true inspiration from an early age. You had Dorothy. I had Liliana.
Cool.
That was my grandmother. And you couldn't go in the house.
Yeah.
She was, immigrated to the U.S. from Italy.
Yeah.
Her and my grandfather. So I'm a second generation. My dad was born in the U.S. And when we would go to that house, I can still remember the smell of
amazing.
The pasta and the sauce. And you would not make it from the door to the kitchen without her putting something in your hand, right, and telling you need to eat. And then when you would start to slow down, she'd be sitting at the table and you'd be stuffed, and you start to slow down, and then she would come over, and it didn't matter if you had 3 helpings of pasta. She would say, "Oh, you know, like." You know, like, it's like, no, I do like. I had three bowls, but it was never ending, and it never stopped.
You know what's interesting is that the word restaurant comes from the word restoration, or to be restored. But we've trained our culture to go out to eat and rate the experience. And so, whether you go see your grandmother or you go out to eat at a restaurant or whatever it is, you leave that experience and you say to yourself, okay, what was it? 1 through 10, 1 through 5, whatever your rating system is. But you've done a disservice to yourself. You haven't allowed yourself restoration through the experience. But when you go and you eat your grandmother's food, you feel restored. I mean, you're telling me about a nostalgic memory that no restaurant could ever top.
No.
Because it's such a memory burned into your mind. Now imagine going out to eat with that same sort of open mind and freedom, and that same sort of open mind, and saying, I'm going to find restoration through my meal tonight and through the experience that I have. You'll walk away with that same feeling of like, wow, that really just blew me away.
Well, that brings me to ask you this question and something that your grandmother talked with you about. And you said that, quote, she taught me how to cook, and more important, taught me that it was okay to take chances and make mistakes.
Yeah.
Why is it so important to make mistakes? Because that's something that, I mean, I know when I cook at home, even as a novice, home cook, I'm always like, what if I make a mistake?
Yeah, I think because we're too afraid of what is the result of that, It's like my grandmother used to always say, no matter what happens in the kitchen, when you make a mistake, you can say shit. That was her rule. And it was like, so I would be 7 and I'd be like, oh, Grandma, we burned the cookies. She'd say, oh, shit. And I was like, great, we can say it together. But I wasn't like afraid of that word. Like, it didn't seem to me like, oh, this is a bad word. It's like that word resonated with me, with the mistake that we made in the kitchen together. And we're going to figure out how to fix it. And it always led me to be curious. Mm-hmm. And I think that being afraid to make the mistake really leads you down this path of like, now I'm not sure I want to be that curious, because if I'm too curious, I might want to try something. Mm-hmm. Oh, and then if I try, what if I fail?
Right.
And then what happens if I fail? It's like, well, then you learn.
Yeah.
And that last part is the hardest part for people to really swallow and hold on to. But like for me, food's food, and it's to bring people together. And if we burn something, throw it away and do it again. Yeah. You're going to burn it, and it's okay. I mean, look, I'm a pro, and I still make mistakes in the kitchen, and that's okay. It's like not very often, but it happens. But Aaron Judge doesn't hit a home run every time he goes up to the plate.
We end up getting almost scientific about it. You pull out the book, you start going through it, and it's like, no, it says, a quarter cup, and you're like measuring it off the top. And if there's a little too much, my wife's like, no, that's too much. And it's like, no, it's not. It's not a science. It's an art.
Well, like we got an email the other day, or maybe it was today, from a person who bought the book. They tried a recipe, and they said it looked amazing, it tasted amazing, but my vegetables were a little bit mushier than yours looked to be. And it's like, well, you used a different pot and pan than I used. And so that's going to change the vegetable. You're now steaming it. You're not roasting it. That's a totally different technique. But again, like that's the beauty of making it. And the person said in the email, she's like, didn't matter. I loved it. I'm making it again, but I just want you to know.
So your journey started cooking at home and with your grandmother. It's taken you into the professional kitchens of the world and also back home. Talk about that transition. How do you go from cooking with your grandmother and then saying to yourself, this is what I want to do with my career, this is what I want to do with my life?
So I was 15 years old, and I was working at a Subway as a certified sandwich artist. I have to say that I was certified because I feel like that certification gives me a little bit of power.
Jersey Mike's is our title sponsor. So.
Yeah, sorry, Jersey Mike's.
sorry, Peter.
If it makes you feel any better, I haven't had Subway since I left. So I was working at a Subway, and there's a gentleman next door named George Serra who was opening up a fast casual pasta restaurant. And what I recognized early on at that age was that if I would memorize what the people's order was, because it would be the same people that would kind of come in every day. So I'm like, if I memorize what Fran gets every time, you don't have to wait in line anymore. And I can just walk in and say, hey, you're good to see you. Your sandwich is at the register. We'll see you tomorrow. So he moves in next door, and he sees the way that I'm communicating with people. He sees how I'm making the sandwiches, and he comes in every Saturday. He orders a 4-inch tuna fish sandwich on a round bun. I still remember the order. Goes through the whole charades of having me make the sandwich, walks out the door, takes the sandwich, throws it in the trash. He didn't even look at it.
Really?
So the 4th time he did it, he walked in, and I said, what's your deal? You walk in every Saturday, you order the sandwich, you never eat. He says, I don't care about the sandwich. He says, I'm watching the way you are with the guests. He says, and your hands are good for food. You don't understand this because you're 15. He says, but you should cook for a living. I'm like, I don't even know what that means. He says, come work for me and I'll teach you. And I said, okay. And so I quit my job and I went to work for him. Mm-hmm. So I worked for him until I went to culinary school. And then what's crazy is when I was 25, I was on the cover of a magazine called Chef Magazine, industry magazine. And I was proud. It was my first cover, So this gentleman's name is George Serra. So I called George and I said, hey, I was on the cover of this magazine. I'm going to send you a couple of copies. I sent him copies. The editor calls me back 6 weeks later and says, hey, we're doing a story on George. I just want to make sure we have the right phone number and email. And I said, yep, that's all correct. I said, what's the story on? She said, George is the founder of our magazine. I said, what? She's like, yeah, he's the founder. We're doing a history recap on the magazine and how it started and where it is now. He doesn't own it anymore, but he's part of why we are who we are. I called George. I said, you founded the magazine I was the cover on and you never told me? He said, that's not the important part of the story. He says, you did it on your own. He says, and that was it. And we never talked about it since then. And he's the only human that has a standing reservation at Spoon and Stable every Wednesday at 6:30. And if he doesn't show up by 7:15, I give away his table. But I think, because he lives in Florida most of the time, but I figure he might come in.
Yeah.
And so George taught me how to love food. And he taught me what it meant to have the commitment to love food. He taught me early on that like this business is not a business where you're going to work 30 or 40 hours a week and you're going to have nights and weekends off and you're going to be able to do this and that. Like none of that existed in his delivery to me. Mm-hmm. His delivery was all about how much do you love it? And do you love it? And if you don't, it's okay to not love it. But then let's talk about what it is that you want to do.
Right.
We used to do art collages on the wall, which taught me a lot about how to look at this from an artistic perspective. And he just really tapped into my parts of my brain that I didn't know as a 15 or 16-year-old kid ever existed. And I knew when I was 16, I would do this the rest of my life.
Yeah. The art piece, I think, is so important. I said a minute ago, because that's what makes it come alive.
Yeah.
And when it comes alive, it creates that experience that you were talking about that just becomes so memorable.
Yeah.
I mean, you have that and you see that, you see that in the book, at home, you see that when you walk into the restaurant. Let's talk about the second question.
Okay.
What do you cook at home?
Yeah.
You organize the book seasonally,
mm-hmm.
and there's a number of recipes for each season. And you mix in some of your professional hallmark recipes, along with many of those that you cook at home with your kids and that are easy to kind of come up with at night. How did you select these specific ones?
So a lot of it is what I've cooked at home for my family, which is what helped me sort of put it through a filter. I mean, the paella that's in the book, I made that 4 days ago for my family. The roasted chicken I made 5 days ago. So a lot of what we're cooking and a lot of the filter of what I'm going to cook at home, sometimes it's like, yes, there's speed. There's some dishes in there that you can do quickly. There's some dishes that are in here that I do faster than what the book says you can do it in because I'm faster at it. And then there's some dishes that take a little bit of time, and there's purpose behind why it takes a little bit of time. And so I try to mix it up and show people the different options you have when you're cooking at home. If you want to spend 3 hours cooking at home on a Sunday, I have a recipe for that.
Yeah.
And if you want to spend 45,
I'm gonna do it.
Yeah. And if you want to spend 30 or 45 minutes to get dinner on the table, I have a recipe for that too. It doesn't change the quality of the food. It doesn't change the quality of the dish, but I want to teach you through this book technique. And really what I want to teach people is confidence. Like I genuinely want people to use this book. I want to see it dirty. I want to see the pages ripped open. Like I want pictures of what people made. I want to be able to see it because that's why we do it. I want people to walk away and be like, yeah, I can make some of this food.
Well, it's funny because I was yelling at everybody for the last couple of days. Don't get the book dirty.
Yeah, right. Exactly.
Like, let me get through the interview
After
first,
today, you are allowed to get it dirty.
Many of the dishes are French inspired. You also said that your language is chefy, quote unquote chefy, and you don't like to speak down to home cooks the way that a lot of chefs do. Why is it important to remain authentic and respectful of the reader and the experience in the language that you use?
I think a lot of the times the reader already knows the answer to it, and so they speak a lot of the language. I mean, the way that media has worked now between social media and the digital media and how all the books come out, a lot of people are so well educated and so well traveled that you don't really have to explain certain things to people. They get that and they understand it. And there's an integrity piece to it, and I think at the end of the day, if I go to take advice from a professional athlete or a professional in any business, I expect them to teach me in a way that will help me understand it, but also on a level of respect of like, look, you might not have 20 years experience doing this, but I'm going to teach you as if you do. And you're going to pick it up faster as a result. I remember moving back to Minneapolis and talking to our cooks and saying, listen, I understand not all of you have had the opportunity to work in cities like New York or San Francisco or wherever. It doesn't mean we're going to treat or train you any differently. I still want you to be the best at who you are and what you do. And as a result, we know how to train you to get there.
Why is teaching so important?
Because somebody taught me. And I think that we get to a point in our lives when we have an opportunity to take what we have been taught and we can pass that on to others, or we can hold it in and not. And I've just never thought of it as holding on to it. I've always thought, I tell cooks this all the time. I tell people I work with all the time, if they get frustrated with somebody who's new, because they're new, I'll say, yeah, do you remember when you were new?
Yeah. Because
the same thing happened to you too.
Yeah, you were probably worse.
Yeah, it's like we were all there. We all were that way. And I mean, you have a new baby. I have a new baby. I mean, it's like, look at it that way. It's like, you have two olders like I do. And it's like, I watch my older kids with my baby now. And it's like, they understand and helping burp him and help lift him up and, whatever it is. And it's like, we were all there, like teach it.
Yeah, and you're still reminding your older ones though every day to stop complaining because you were that.
Yeah, totally.
That's what I have to tell my oldest all the time.
I tell my oldest, I'm like, do you see how cute he is? You were that cute. Now you're like, Dad, where are you? Pick me up. I'm like, can't you be cute again?
Yeah, my daughter comes down every morning. It's like every morning I go down, I make her breakfast, I make her lunch, I get it all in, and 4 out of 5 days she'll roll in and not even acknowledge my presence.
Right.
And
exactly.
then we have to have the conversation. Oh, hi, good morning.
Yeah.
Didn't see you there.
Yeah.
How are
right.
you today?
Yeah. Right. Exactly. It's amazing.
You mentioned confidence a lot throughout the book.
Yeah.
Why is it important in the kitchen for a chef at any level to have confidence?
Because I think you need to believe in what it is you're serving to people. And I think that when you get behind what it is you're cooking and why you're cooking it, that translates through the food. And it translates how the guest or your friends or whomever comes over to your house, it translates how they eat. You know, I think we can all admit we've been in restaurants before where you like walk in and you're like, I don't know, man, something's off about this space, right? Like, I don't get it. It's like, well, that's something off, is that there's something not genuine. There's something not authentic. And they're trying to sell you something that they don't believe in either, but they're going to give it their best shot every single day. And it's like, then you walk into some place, you're like, this place feels amazing. It's like, yeah, because they hit the authenticity button pretty hard and they're confident with what they hit. And that's what I want people to understand and see throughout the book.
And you can do it anywhere.
Absolutely. I mean, whether you're cooking in a pro kitchen or a home kitchen, it's the same. It's the same formula.
Your grandmother's pot roast
is
in this book. It's been on the Today Show previously.
Yeah.
We've talked a lot about it. It's one of the most downloaded recipes on the New York Times website, and it started on an index card. How come simple is often so important?
Nostalgia. I mean, I think a lot of it is nostalgia for us. I mean, I look back at, pot roast for me growing up with my grandmother. I mean, I remember the smells, like you were explaining to me about your grandmother, the smells when you'd walk into her house earlier before we jumped on. It's like, those are the things that bring me right back to it. And that pot roast recipe is so funny because my grandmother passed away probably 11 or 12 years ago. So she never saw any of this happen. And I know she sees it now, right? But like, she never saw it in the flesh. And it's so cool to see what recipes she had on her index card. And so she was a recovering alcoholic. She was recovered for over 30 years when she passed away. And I have this little booklet. It's like one of the first, it's my dedication page. You see this little booklet. And each day you flip it, it's a saying or some sort of mantra for the day. So that booklet was given to her from her AA coach. And so when she passed away, she left that booklet for me and all of her recipes. And that was it. And it's like, that's all I wanted, because that booklet was so powerful. I remember as a kid going to see her, and I would like flip the day for her, and then we would read it out loud together. And she has like little scribbles of like when she saw the first robin and what the year was. And it's like, it's so cool. And then I look in her recipe book and it's like, yeah, we can translate pot roast to a restaurant, and we can translate pot roast to home cooking.
Now you can make it. I can make it at my house.
Yeah, you can.
Third question. How do you cook at home? You've thrown out a number of techniques and things to think about when you're cooking at home. So I want to ask you about a couple of them here. The essential tools. What do you need?
Yeah, it's not as much as what people think. I mean,
I don't need this.
Right. No, you don't need this huge kitchen and this huge line. I mean, that will help. You don't have to do as much work. But, like I like graters. I like spoons. I like mise en place bowls. And by mise en place bowls, like having a landing zone. And we talk about this in the book. It's like, if you're going to cut the onions, where do the onions then go before they go into the pot? Because they have to go somewhere. They can't sit on the top left corner of your cutting board because it's a little sloppy. It's actually really sloppy. And a messy station is a messy mind. And so I know how to filter that. I know how to not be messy. I know if it is messy, how to make it non-messy anymore. But as a home cook, you don't. And then they get frantic. Certain knives that I love. And there's a lot of things that people have in their home kitchen because they bought it at the whim, at the spur of the moment. They thought it was cute. That's great, but you don't always need all that stuff.
Again, it goes right to like, keep it simple.
Yeah, keep it simple.
Things.
Totally.
You talked about this concept of keeping it organized and keeping it neat.
Yeah.
You talk about preparation, and people have spoken about you. And one of the things that they highlight most often is your detailed preparation. The tagline of the podcast is how you prepare today determines success tomorrow. Because I fundamentally believe that. It all comes down to preparation, the work you put in before.
Yep.
You actually separate, and in your conversation about the prep zone, you separate
mental from physical preparation.
Yep.
Can you talk about the difference between those two and why it is important in terms of when you're preparing in any kitchen to begin cooking? Why do you have to separate the mental and the physical preparation?
Yeah, so I mean, the physical preparation is it's pretty simple in the fact that you have the product that you have that starts out as a whole onion, goes to a chopped onion, that goes to a sautéed onion, whatever it is. So the physical part is pretty easy. The mental part is the part that people don't realize actually takes a lot more work than what you realize. When you go into a restaurant kitchen or you go into a home kitchen, and I see this a lot when I go visit friends, not a lot of people cook for me, which is probably not a shocker. But if I go over to a friend's house and they want to cook for me, it's often frantic, right? And the reason it's frantic is because...
Well, they're nervous.
It's that, but it's also like there's timing. And they're trying to figure out, like, how do I make sure that this is done by the time this is done by the time that's done? And that's the mental preparation that you need to do ahead of time. And you need to kind of take a step back and sort of just like walk through it. I use a lot of sports analogies because I'm very close to sports because of our catering company. But we had a player who played for us in the Minnesota Wild for a while and who we cooked for. And he would sit out on the bench before every game for like an hour. And he would visualize his game before he would play. And I see that with a lot of athletes when we cook for them. I see them take time to stop and visualize. Now, from somebody who's not understanding what they're doing, you just look at them, you're like, oh, they're just sitting on the bench, they're sitting in the chair, they're sitting on their couch. It's like, no, they're actually visualizing what is now going to happen. They're trying to manifest what will be the result once they get the opportunity presented to them, which is all about the mental and physical preparation for when you meet that. And cooking's the same way. I mean, it's a physical sport that way.
You talked about timing.
Yeah.
That, I think, is the place where the majority of us get it wrong.
Totally.
Because I'll get in the kitchen. Even I was even doing it last night with the French toast. Because you have the French toast itself, and then you have the mascarpone, and then you also have the pecans.
Yeah.
And so you're trying to get all these things ready to go. And I'm thinking about timing, and I feel like it's like an episode of Hell's Kitchen, and I'm at the window, and it's like, okay, what's up?
Yeah.
And then but in the book, you say, unless you're experienced, don't try to multitask.
That's right. Yeah, don't.
Just,
it's like when you're a young cook getting into this business, and this will happen to me still to this day. I'll get a young cook to come to me and say, Chef, I really want to learn how to make X, Y, and Z. And my response is this: dice a shallot. Mince an onion, Juliana carrots. Just show me like the smallest technique that you can do that's really perfect. And let's make sure we're on that step. Because if you're talking about you want to be on step 50, but really you're just kind of on step 2 through 7, well, let's master 2 through 7. And then let's go to step 8. We'll get to 50. And I think it's the same as the home cook. It's like, don't try to multitask a million things. Like, just do it right. Be confident, because that will give you the confidence.
You talk about being clean
as
well. This is like the biggest fight in my house. Because
so do you wash dishes while you cook?
Absolutely.
Okay.
Absolutely.
Me too.
My wife, though, will fill the sink.
Yeah, I can't do that.
And say, we'll deal with it after. Let's focus on the food. I go crazy.
I think your wife and my wife are the same. My wife will do that. She'll fill the sink at breakfast. And I'm like, I've sort of learned how to politely like shush her out of the way. Like, I'm like hip checking her out of the kitchen.
I do that too. I say, I got it.
Yeah.
I always say, I'll clean the kitchen.
I'm like, you can't do that. That's not okay.
I'll come in the kitchen at lunch, from my office, and there will be plates in the kitchen. And the first thing I will do is clean that. We had a guy named Jason Kalipa on. He's a CrossFit champion.
Okay.
And owns a line of gyms called the NC Fit.
Okay.
And he says it's called like it's like the night sink.
Yeah.
There's a term for it. I can't remember right now, but it's this feeling of anxiety that you have if you're the type of person who can't go to bed if there's dishes in the sink.
Oh, I mean, listen, if there is like 3 things of oatmeal in the sink from the morning breakfast, I'm like, well, I better deep clean the sink. Yeah. Like it's not even a hesitation on my end. Being clean is really important in the kitchen. It's really important being in a home. For me, it's like everything, because you know why? So part of it starts with a really early on standard, and this is the professional side of me. But when you start out in a kitchen, you usually start out in what would be considered a lower position, dishwashing, right? That is truthfully the most important position. In fact, we're sitting at Boulud Sud at 3:00 today. There's a guy that's going to walk through this door. His name is Momo. And Momo was a dishwasher for me when I worked at Cafe Boulud 10 years ago plus. And I still talk to Momo to this day. And it's such an integral part of our restaurant. If the dishwasher can't execute the cleanliness and the organization that you need them to do, the restaurant falls apart.
Yeah.
And so your job really starts there. And then it goes up from there. Everybody wants to come in and cook the steaks. Of course you want to cook the steaks, but why would I trust you or anybody with a 50-pound piece of steak or $50 piece of steak if you can't take care of arugula salad?
Yeah. Well, I should disclose that I started my early days of work were at Friendly's.
Yeah, cool.
When I was like a freshman in high school, washing dishes.
Yeah.
And as an ice cream scooper.
Yeah.
There. And then in college, I worked at California Pizza Kitchen.
Nice.
In Boston. And the first person that I would tip out every night would be the dishwasher.
Yeah. Yeah.
Because as the bartender there, I was only as good as that dishwasher being able to keep me stocked and ready to go.
If you don't have the glasses, you're not selling.
Yeah.
Right? And that's the whole thing. And so that's all about keeping clean.
You said, quote, I put as much thought and attention to setting the dinner table as I do preparing the food that will be served on it. I watched your TEDx talk on creating majestic moments. And you said creating a majestic moment is one of the hardest things to do. You mentioned that so many people try to create that majestic moment through the food, but it's really much broader than that. Yeah. Can you define the majestic moment and why it's so important?
Yeah, I think a lot of it about it is listening to, watching, and understanding how you can deliver a moment to a guest that they didn't expect to ever receive. An example I'll use is and I use this in the TEDx talk, is that a guest might, especially in New York, but even Minnesota, traffic's really bad. You have a 6 p.m. reservation. You don't get here till 6:25. You know, even if you're a person who might usually be 5-10 minutes late, or if you're a person who always is habitually on time, or even 3, 4, 5 minutes early, being 25 minutes late, it's disruptive.
Yeah.
And so you walk into the restaurant with your shoulders sort of tight and your neck is like tight, and you feel a sense of guilt and shame that you've showed up 25 minutes late to something that you shouldn't have shown up late for. And you rationalize it with yourself. Well, the doctor's never on time. The dentist is never on, you rationalize yourself with all these things. It's like, but we're not any of those things. The seats that you're sitting in, that's real estate. Mm-hmm. So yes, we want to take care of you, but in 2 hours, there's a new guest who we need to take care of. And so now it's changes sort of the respect. But what I just said is not ever something that should be felt by the guests. What should be felt is they walk in, you see their seized up shoulder, you reassure them everything's going to be okay. Give them a glass of champagne, give them a martini, give them, whatever you want. I don't care. And just let them know that it's okay that happened. We're still going to make the next 2 hours of your life majestic. Mm-hmm. Allow us that opportunity and release yourself from it.
What's the clean slate moment?
Yeah, so the clean slate, the idea of being in the clean slate moment for us is really just being able to look at the guest and even at home, when I'm at home with my family, and just sort of start everybody off from scratch. Mm-hmm. We go in to eat and we have this preconceived notion of how things should be. We start to judge it. Demi is really good. Demi, our restaurant, is really good at the clean slate moment because we never tell you what you're going to eat. We never tell you how many courses it's going to be. We don't do that because of two reasons. One, if we tell you what the menu is ahead of time, you will judge it prior to getting there, mm-hmm. and you will already create an expectation of what you will like and what you will dislike before you even see the food. If I tell you how many courses it's going to be, you're going to value the experience. If I tell you and your wife you're going to have a 10-course meal, at course 5, I guarantee you're counting.
Yeah. And
you're going to say, well, we're 5 in, we have 5 left. Do you feel good? Are you full? Do you think it's worth it?
That's going to be the whole conversation.
Right. We paid $250 per person for this. Do you feel like it's worth it? I mean, we only have 4 courses left. Oh, now we're on this. And so what's happened is you've taken away that opportunity of somebody to feel restored through that experience. So just give them a clean slate. Start them from nothing.
What about the importance of the first and last impressions?
Yeah, I mean, that's just in life, that's so important too, right? I mean, not even in the kitchen, but, I think that there are always going to be those instances where you make a great first impression and those instances where you don't make a great first impression, but you always have the last impression to make up for it. My son just went through hockey tryouts, my middle one, and I had to kind of explain it's 5 sessions of tryouts. And so they get graded a 1 through 4 grade. Okay. And he really wanted to be in the one. He wanted to be in group 1, and he was in group 2 twice. And I just kept telling him, it's not how you finish. It's not how you start. It's going to be how you finish in this, right? So just keep focusing on that. And he did. He did exactly what he wanted to do. He set 3 goals, and he achieved all 3.
You mentioned that when you opened your restaurants, you didn't look at the press.
Yeah.
So much of what you do is, it's critical. I mean, people are critics, and there are professional critics who come into a restaurant and, will nitpick every little thing.
Yep.
And then there's the normal person who might at times be better or worse and then start posting about it, and they may or may not know what they're talking about. How do you manage that? Yeah,
I mean, it's there's never like a perfect science to that. In managing it, I think that it comes down to a bit of balance too. And how much of it is that you believe it to be true. I think for me, when I read through a lot of those things, what I'm looking for is I'm looking for a trend. I'm looking for a common denominator. And if I read the one-off, I hated this restaurant because the lighting was bad, and I've read it 3 times in 8 years, I'm not too worried about the lighting. But if I read it 3 times in 3 weeks, I'm going to look at the lighting, and so it's more of a common denominator. You need to kind of pull away. It's really hard to take away the personal side of it because it feels personal.
Yeah.
When anybody critiques what you're doing, it feels very personal.
Oh, and you're investing so, like you said, it's not a 30, 40 hour a week thing. I mean,
it's
you're
a lot of
invested
time.
In this 100% all the
time. It's money. It's people that part of it is also one of the things that I think is often not spoken about is because, if I'm the chef and the owner of my restaurants, my face is the face of those restaurants. And I get that. But there's a lot of people that lift those restaurants and that make those restaurants great that are not me. In fact, there's over 130 of those people that do that. And so when you get a critique that's not good, that's where the personal side hurts, because you're like, wait, you just upset somebody who I care deeply about. Oh yeah, I know you said you don't like me, but I can get over that.
Right.
Yeah.
It's all the people, who are coming. Look here right now.
Yeah.
We got here at 11 o'clock. And there was already, 5, 6, 7 people here, and they're already putting in the work for tonight.
Yeah.
And it doesn't even open here till 5 o'clock.
Right. Exactly. And they're prepping for a dinner that we're not going to actually start until 8 o'clock.
Yeah. Yeah. It's all day.
Yeah.
All day. The last question is, why do you cook at home? Your vision for at home came during the COVID pandemic, when everything shifted and you started these remote classes and these live streaming, these cooking classes from your kitchen. But you also said that the experience of writing this book made you a better chef, a better person, and brought you closer to your family. Kids love cooking.
Yeah.
My son,
Cool.
he's 2.5. He has a little kitchen set. Yeah. And every day he's like, I'm cooking. He's like, what are you cooking? And he's telling you, I'm cooking pizza, or I'm cooking chicken.
Yeah.
It's like, how do you even know that?
Yeah, I know.
but they love it. They run around with the pots and everything.
Yeah.
The kitchen is also the heart of every home.
Yeah.
And it doesn't matter how big or small your house is. It doesn't matter how great or not great your kitchen is. It doesn't matter who's there. It's seemingly almost always the first place you go and where everybody masses, and there's always seems to be room for one more in the kitchen.
Yeah.
Why is that? Why do we gravitate to the kitchen?
I think there's a bit of nostalgia there that brings us back to when we were younger and what that meant for us when we were kids. And I think seeing the gift of giving is really powerful. And when you can give food to your family, to your friends, to your loved ones, and you see them enjoy that food, but more importantly, enjoy the experience of why that food brought everybody together, there's something that's really addicting about that. And I think that ultimately that's what it comes down to. It's a matter of giving, and that gift that you have as a human being to give to others and what that does for somebody.
How have you changed at the back end of the book?
For me, how I changed was being able to cook for my kids and my wife so much. I mean, I would be, in a normal week, we'll call it, I'm home 1, maybe 2 nights a week. And so that's 1 or 2 nights a week that I do get to cook at home. Admittedly, there are weeks where I'm just like, I don't want to cook tonight. Let's order pizza. I don't want to cook tonight. Let's go to this restaurant, have dinner, whatever. Of course that happens. But during the pandemic, I was home every night and I could cook every night. And what's funny is that I started to cook at home the way that I cooked at the restaurants, but I don't have that much time. So I'd get home at like 5, 6 o'clock, and my wife's like, okay, can we have dinner at 7? I'm like, you want dinner in an hour? But I need to brine the pork.
Right.
And then I need to shave the Brussels sprouts for the salad. And then I have to make a pomegranate vinaigrette. And she's like, can you not do half of that and still have dinner at 7? I'm like, I could, but why would we want half? So it helped me develop these recipes of like, okay, what does that look like? How can I get some of this stuff done quickly? And I will tell you, even myself, who not only wrote the recipes, but also tested the recipes myself, I cook from the book still, because I want to like make sure that it works, and I want to make sure that people are excited about it, and I can teach my kids that.
So I've got a quick hits lightning round session for you, because you added a section in this book about shopping. And you called it Gavin's Commandments for Shopping, because this is where the journey starts. You know, we talked about preparation and the importance of preparation, but it all starts, honestly, as you rightfully say, before you even go into the store. You've got to be thinking about this, or you're going back. Yep. You know, it's cooking almost becomes like that the project that you're doing in the room of your house, where you got to go to Home Depot 17 times. You know, you got to go back to the store a whole bunch of times if you don't think about it.
And we've all done that thing where you've gone to the grocery store and you forgot that one thing, and then you're mind blocked. You're like, well, now I can't make the entire dinner. I can't make anything, and it's like, you don't have to have the cauliflower. We can pivot. Let's do something. You know, it's all good.
I'm gonna throw it out. Okay, you got 6 of them here. I'll give you the commandment, and you give me the 1-2 line. What does it mean? Why is it important?
Okay.
All right. First one. Look through the fridge, freezer, and cupboards before leaving the house.
Because half the stuff you're going to buy, you already have.
Hands down, every time.
Every single time. And you come home, you're like, did you get the tomato paste? I did, and I have 17 tubes in the pantry in case you want more.
So true. We were making the French toast last night, and I called my wife and I sent her the recipe on her way home, and I said, pick up these things, and I said, do we have vanilla? And she said, we have 4 bottles.
4 bottles of vanilla. Right, exactly.
Because we've done this before.
Yep.
Number 2, don't shop on an empty stomach.
Huge. I mean, it's the same way I do this when I taste food in my restaurants. I purposely eat lunch prior to my tasting. If you shop on an empty stomach, you're going to be frantic in what you shop for. Mm-hmm. You're going to say, okay, tonight we're going to make the French toast. And then you're going to get there and you say, man, but that roasted chicken in the book looks really good. And there's a special on for chicken. Maybe we should we'll get both. Mm-hmm. Let's get both. And then what happens? You make the French toast. 4 days later, you're like, why does it smell in the fridge? Oh, we didn't do anything with the chicken. That's what happens.
Third one, don't make a shopping list. This is contrary to what I would think.
I know. So the reason that I don't necessarily, I mean, if you're following a recipe, yes, you're going to have to make a list off of it. But if you go through what is in your fridge and your freezer and your pantry, and you go to the store or you go to a farmer's market without a list, 9 times out of 10, you're going to walk away with enough stuff to make food for 12. Because you're going to look and you're going to start to buy with some different opportunities. You're going to say, well, those radishes look great. This looks good. And now you can start to piece together. For me, I can piece together an entire meal. I never go to the grocery store with a list. Ever. Never once. I just my wife will send me a list, but her list are things that we need for pack lunches, whatever, all that stuff, right? I mean, I just show up and I'm like, all right, Linda will say to me, she'll say, what do you want for dinner? I'm like, just get whatever you think and we'll figure it out. It took years of our marriage for her to finally just accept that I'm never going to send her a list to say here are the 15 things that I need. Yeah. And so then she would come home with whatever she wanted. And she's like, okay, you figure it out. I'm like, all right, no problem. I got it.
All right. The fourth one, I appreciate this one because I grew up in Rhode Island and Boston. Okay. And we have so many of these, especially in the Italian food section. Visit specialty shops.
Yeah, big time. This is we've been programmed in our American culture to go to one store for everything.
The supermarket.
And it's the supermarket. And it's unfortunate that we still think about it that way, because if we were to just take that little bit of a detour, it's amazing how much more that opens you up to something else that's out there, both culturally speaking, but then also from an ingredient perspective. And so what I challenge people with this commandment specifically is take something else in your life that you would go out of your way for. What is that one thing that no matter what you would go out of your way for? Is it a spa treatment? Is it making sure you hit the gym because you travel a lot and you got to make sure you hit that gym before you do your day? What is that thing that you will always do? And if you can just translate that same discipline into going to those specialty markets, you're going to learn about people's stories and what they've brought to you that will inspire you to be a better cook and a better person.
So my mom, I told you, my mom came the other day down for Halloween, and she stopped at one of the Italian markets in Rhode Island on the way, and she brought the nice thin prosciutto and the homemade mozzarella balls,
Amazing.
In the water and everything. And we had some of it the other night, and then yesterday I had it for lunch. I ate the entire ball for lunch.
Nice.
It was a lot. And she called me about 2:00. And she says, make sure you eat the cheese and the prosciutto. It's going to go bad because, he makes it fresh there. So it's not, it doesn't have all this stuff that's going to keep it, the preservatives. And I said, Mom,
I already ate
it's
it.
been gone for 3 hours.
Yeah.
And she said, you ate the whole thing? I ate the whole thing.
Yeah, that's amazing. But it's true. It's so delicious. When it's done fresh like that, it's so delicious.
It doesn't feel like, it doesn't feel like the process stuff.
Well, and how many people do you know travel to Europe? And when they come back from Europe, what do they often say? Oh, the food's just so different. I go to France, like the bread is so different. Do you know why? Because they made it that morning and it's intended to be eaten that day, not to be purchased on Monday and then eaten Friday that week. Yeah. And there's a reason for that.
Yeah. Or sometimes 2 weeks later.
Right. Or something even worse.
The fifth one, ask questions.
Yeah. Again, this is curiosity. And even when you're in the specialty shops, or if you go to, and we heard this a lot when we were giving these classes for at home, people would say, well, I go to the butcher shop and I don't know what to say. And it's like, just ask them. I'd say if you want to make chicken stock, go to the butcher shop and say, do you have chicken necks and feet that I can buy? And they'll tell you yes, or they'll tell you no. And if they tell you no, they can order it because they have all of the contacts to do that for you. And they are there to serve you. Like, I was having a conversation with a friend the other day, and he was asking me about, what is it about this restaurant profession that I love? And I said, I love to serve people. It makes me so happy to serve others. Mm-hmm. And when you are a butcher, if you're in a specialty store, whatever it is, your passion is to serve others. So ask them, be curious.
Last one, don't skip the freezer aisle.
Yeah. So I grew up eating the Green Giant spinach, the Jolly Green Giant.
I remember it well. It was a frozen brick.
I mean, listen, I didn't even know spinach came out of the ground until I moved to California when I was 19 years old. I thought the Jolly Green Giant just compressed frozen spinach from some plants. Beets, I didn't realize beets didn't come out of a jar. It was a shock to me. But we often, as a result, we miss the frozen food section because we're like, oh, it's not going to be good. But that's not true. So if you want peas and corn in the winter, or you want strawberries in the winter, don't buy fresh because they've frozen the freshest ones possible in the freezer aisle. And we are supposed to eat what's in season, not because there is a book that tells you. You're supposed to do it because that's when the highest nutrients of that produce or the food goes in your body. That's when it heals you the most. So go to the freezer section and get that stuff in the winter. I mean, I want to have strawberries and blueberries in the winter too, but I don't want to buy fresh. Right. So I'll buy frozen and I'll use it. Make a compote, make a smoothie, whatever.
You said 17% of restaurants close in the first year. It's a super competitive space.
Yeah.
People have so much choice. I mean, you come to New York and there's 100,000 places on every corner. You can go to multiple ones. It's also an industry that was most affected by COVID. Yeah. And we still see the impacts of that today. How do you stay competitive and at the leading edge of the industry?
I think being genuine, being authentic and genuine is really important. I mean, I worked for Daniel for 8 years, and I still to this day, I mean, he's one of my best friends and he's a mentor of mine, and he's still the most authentic, genuine person I know, and he's also the most curious person I know. And I see his restaurants still thrive and still do super well, and I think a lot of it has to do with that. You want to give genuine service and great hospitality. You want to cook delicious food, and you want to serve that to people on a nightly basis, and you got to come back and you got to do it again the next day, and then you got to do it the day after that, the day after that, the day after that. But if you fake that, and if you don't really believe in it, it's too hard. It's too hard to do anything. And when you put yourself in a space that allows critics to change what it is you want to do, and you don't really have your footing, it's not sustainable. And COVID cut us at the kneecaps, and it exposed us in a way that was so vulnerable. It either scared people away from the business or it attracted them to the business. But a lot of people stood frozen. And from our perspective, our company, when we closed everything down, we kept all of our managers on, and we said, we're not going to freeze. Let's be vulnerable. Let's talk about what sucks. Let's talk about what our fears are. And then let's go forward, because when the train gets moving, I want to be moving with it.
Yeah. What do you tell the home cook who picks up at home and says, I want to become the next Chef Gavin Kaysen?
I think it's great. Start with the fundamentals, start with the fundamentals and discipline. I mean, a lot of what we do starts with discipline, and it's repetition. It's doing the same thing over and over again every single day. And knowing that what you are doing is creating happiness for others. There's an incredible children's book called How Full Is Your Bucket? Have you ever read it?
No, I haven't,
Okay.
but I got to check it out.
Pick it up. So I've given speeches to Fortune 500 companies, and I will read them this book as my opening intro. And the reason I do it is because we all look for what's the self-help. We all look for, like, what is that spirit that I'm looking for, and how do I become a better version of myself, and what does that look like? And so we buy books, we listen to podcasts, we do all sorts of different things, and all of it is important. There's also children's books that do it in 14 pages, rhyme, and have great color illustrations.
That's true.
And that book does it. And it's How Full Is Your Bucket? And when you make somebody else happy, it in turn makes you happy. But you're doing it for a genuine purpose, not as a transactional experience.
Well, Chef, as we close out, the Jedburghs had to do 3 things every day as core foundational tasks. You call them habits, if you will. They had to be able to shoot, they had to be able to move, and they had to be able to communicate. If they did these 3 things with the utmost precision, then they could actually focus their attention on more complex challenges that came their way. What are the 3 things that you do every day in your world to be successful?
It's a great question. One is routine. My first thing in just sort of creating balance and mindset. When I wake up in the morning, I lay out my day in the mindset. So routine is one of them. I go about my day with curiosity and try to have an open mind. There's a lot of things that are thrown at me on a daily basis of what are the problems? What are we running into when I am tasked in looking at what are the solutions? So between routine and curiosity. And then the other thing too is the last one I would say that I probably focus on a lot is nature. And I try to use nature in my day-to-day routine, whether that is, I'll give you an example this morning. I woke up this morning. You know what I did for my mindfulness? I walked out to Central Park and I sat for 30 minutes. And I just listened to the birds. And I sat in the sun and I closed my eyes and I just sort of took my day in. And it was just a way to sort of set and balance my day. And I think that the older that I've gotten and the more shit I've been through, I've realized that those moments are really important because you owe them to yourself. You owe yourself that opportunity to say, no, it's okay to feel shaken right now. It's okay to feel sad. It's okay to feel tired. It's okay to feel whatever you feel. But how do you sort of shake that balance out? And what does that look like? And those are really important to me.
Routine, approach each day with curiosity and an open mind.
And nature.
Find and use nature.
Yeah.
Those 3 are great. We talk a lot on the podcast about the 9 characteristics of performance that are used by Special Operations Command to recruit and assess talent. We say elite performers in any industry demonstrate all 9 of these: drive, resiliency, adaptability, humility, integrity, curiosity, which you spoke a lot about, team ability, effective intelligence, emotional strength. Elite performers demonstrate all 9 of these, never at once.
Sure.
But the situation that you're in will dictate which of these you have to draw on to find solutions to the problems as you referenced. At the end of each one of these conversations, I think about my guests. I think about your experience. I think about what you're doing in the world, how you're leading, how you're impacting the industry. And I take one. I think for you, it's curiosity.
Yeah.
You've mentioned it a lot here,
Yeah.
but I asked you the question of how do you stay ahead?
Yeah.
How do you continue to lead? And it requires adaptability and it requires innovation.
Yeah.
But as you also said, it requires you to care about people.
Yeah.
And you can't care about people. You can't care about their experience if you're not curious and if you don't want to know about them. You don't want to genuinely, as you also said, and authentically understand what makes them happy. If you do that, you can innovate, you can adapt, you can stay ahead of a very, very competitive market with a lot of people out there who are trying to get in. You've done that. You continue to do that. The book At Home is absolutely incredible.
Thank you.
We will continue to enjoy it. It will get dirty.
Yeah, good.
And
Good.
The next time I see you,
Give me
it
a
will not
picture of
look
this
like
book in
this.
6 months.
I will send it to you.
Okay.
I sincerely appreciate you stopping in here before you have the rest of your night. You have a big night tonight. This has been an amazing conversation. Special thanks to the Boulud Sud staff here and Chef Boulud for taking the opportunity to let us sit here in his restaurant. Majestic moments are critical to our success as leaders.
That's right.
You demonstrated it in everything that you're doing. And you also said, and I want to kind of close with this, that it's not just about hospitality and restaurants. It's everywhere you look.
That's right.
And I'm making the Wellington at Christmas. I know it's in the
That's
spring,
the one.
but I'm doing it at Christmas.
That's the one. Make the Wellington for Christmas. You know, that Wellington, it's easier than what you realize.
Is it? I made one last year and it took me all day.
I'm not saying it's not going to take you all day, but it's delicious. Thanks for having me on.
I'll send you pictures.
Cool.
Thanks.
Thank you.
American Jedburghs went out to form the foundation of the United States Special Forces and the Special Activities Director to the Central Intelligence Agency. Thanks for listening to the Jedburgh Podcast. I'm your creator and host, Fran Racioppi. Join us next week for a new episode on Apple, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. Check us out on YouTube for full episodes, highlights, and other behind-the-scenes content. If you like what you heard, give us a like and leave a review. Follow me, Fran Racioppi, Talent War Group, and our sponsor Jersey Mike Subs on LinkedIn, Instagram, Facebook, or Twitter. Send your comments and inquiries to media@talentwargroup.com. As a former member of Special Forces, the Jedburgh Podcast donates a percentage of all proceeds to the Green Beret Foundation, supporting America's Special Forces and their families. Thanks for joining us on this episode. How you prepare today determines success tomorrow.